Jonah chapter number 2. Fish's belly, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice. For thou hast cast me into the deep. Excuse me. For thou hast cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the floods compassed me about. All thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then I said, I am cast out of thy sight, yet I will look again toward thy holy temple. The waters compassed me about, even to the soul. The depths closed me round about. The weeds were wrapped about my head. I went down to the bottoms of the mountains, and the earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came in unto thee, into thine holy temple. They that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. But I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay that I have vowed. I will pay that I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. And the Lord spake unto the fish, and it vomited out Jonah upon the dry land. Chapter number 2 of Jonah. All right, who's got some deep insights from chapter number 2? If you've been in Sunday school, been around church, surely you know some stuff out of this chapter as well. Jonah chapter number 2. Any observations? Connor.
This chapter shows the mercy of God, and it shows the mercy of God towards a prideful person, and a person who's stubborn and wants to do their own thing. And God brings people like that through His mercy, brings them very, very low. And I can testify the same thing, that even the point of my salvation, God brought me very, very low. And I put myself very low as well in my actions. But God redeemed me out of that very low place. And it's happened many times in my Christian walk where, I've struggled and I've had situations where I've been like, why is this happening, God? And I feel like Jonah here, where he says, I cried by my reason of my affliction. He felt like he was being afflicted, and he felt like he was in a hopeless situation. And it says here, when my soul fainted within me, I remember the Lord. So it was when his soul was fainted, when he felt afflicted, when he was in an impossible situation, he actually called out to God and realized God will be my Savior. God is the only one that can get me out of this. Not my own way of doing things. God will redeem me and take me out of this situation. And he says, has a change of mind, and he looks and he goes, and I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay that I have vowed. Salvation of the Lord. And he just has a complete change of heart. That's all because his affliction took place in his life. His soul fainted, and he turned to God.
Yeah.
And his attitude was completely changed in this chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it does. God brought him low, like I said, about as low as you can go, in a physical sense.
I have a question.
Connor will get the answer to this.
Just in the first verse it says, then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish's belly. Is that after? Because previously, back up to the last verse of the previous chapter, it says that he was in the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So does that mean that he was there 3 days and 3 nights before he finally surrendered his will? Or does that mean that God left him there for 3 days and 3 nights?
No, I think he probably started praying straight away.
Day one.
Yeah, day one, about hour one, I'd imagine. Minute one.
I was just wondering which way
Yeah.
it would go.
I think like 3 days is how long he was in there. Because that pictures the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. It's a sign of Jesus uses it.
But I just wondered at what point did he surrender his will to the Lord instead of by will?
I think about the second fathom going down. Maybe, I don't know.
But it does list all the things that he actually happened to him while he was in the belly of the whale.
Yeah, it's quite descriptive.
Events that were happening while this was all going on, and it would take time for it to happen.
Yeah. So, yeah, don't know. Was he conscious through it all? I don't know. But he cried, and I don't know if it was the most well articulated prayer, but it might be one of the ones where the Spirit of God translates our groanings. Yeah, I think it might have been, yeah. Yeah. Someone on the sonar was like, those whales are sounding real funny this time of year. Ben.
It's sort of going what Connor was saying. It's a prayer of like a submissive mind or a submissive person. Like at points, I guess you can try to sort of looking for like grind against what God's doing to you. But yeah, as you see good Jonah fashion, he humbles himself when things get really, really bad for him, and he recognizes what he's done. And yeah, one of my favorites is, but I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like even when bad stuff is happening to you, you got to be thankful because God, he's working on you.
Yeah.
He's still not done with you.
And it's a sacrifice of praise. And he acknowledged the sacrifice of our lips giving fruit. The fruit of our lips giving thanks to his name is what it says in Hebrews. Sacrifice of praise. But yeah, for sure. Anyone else? Jude.
Yeah, in number in a verse like 5, I think. Yeah, the water compass about even to the soul, the pit flows round about. The weeds were wrapped about my head.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, this is described maybe from Jewish interpretation to English. It looks like a partially digested food inside the whale, and then it was the whale vomited to release.
Yeah.
So just imagine he was covered with slime or enzymes, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's covered the smells and everything and darkness. When you backslide, I experienced that also. I think you feel very ugly. I mean, you don't want to present yourself to the community because you get sin. Having a sinful heart or intentionally eating sin or being backsliding, you cannot face the truth. And he is in darkness under the belly of whale. During that time, I think he started thinking. And then if you go farther, in number 6, I went down to the bottoms in the mountain, the earth, the waters was about me forever. Yeah, the Lord picked him up.
Yeah.
Even with his backsliding heart, God picture her, he is still a God of second chance, but you need to repent from sin.
Yeah. It's like Ben was saying as well, like this is such a watershed moment in his life. You'd think that Jacob has a watershed moment in his life, right? When he gets right with God and he has a vision and the angels and at Bethel, and you can see the difference in Jacob before and after that moment. This should be that sort of same moment in Jonah's life, but yet we know the story that he still sits under a gourd later on and pities himself and pities and is saddened by the fact that the Ninevites repented. So it's a strange old story, but you're right. God shows mercy on him at the absolute depths of where he could go. Like I said, he's gone down in chapter number 1 in his backslidings against God and his rebellion against God and his hard heart against what God wants. And yet God is merciful to him all the way to the very depths, and he cries that prayer of him out of the utter despair, which we talk about the gutter, but this is sort of like lower than the gutter. This is down into the drain and out into the sea. And God, he hears the cry. And I love this, that everything about what Jonah was trying to do at this very moment was to flee from the presence of God. I'm getting out of Israel, I'm getting out of Dodge, I'm running away, I'm done with this, I'm not going over here and doing this, what you've asked me to do. I'm going away from the presence of the Lord. And then throw him in the fish, and the very thing that he is seeking is the presence of the Lord. He says in verse 4, where he says, I will look again toward thy holy temple. I'll look again. I'll go back to the holy temple, which is what Solomon, remember when the temple was dedicated? That when you're in distress and when you're in times of great need, that if my people, which are called by my name, should humble themselves, and oftentimes that is attributed to anything and everyone, but he's saying about the nation of Israel, he's saying also about those about the temple, if you pray towards this place where the name of God is, that he will heal their prayers and heal their backslidings. Well, this absolutely is the backslidings of Jonah and his hard heart digging in to be rebellious against God. So he prays towards thy holy temple. You can imagine him in a washing machine here of this gurgling whale's stomach. Not quite sure where it is, but God, wherever your temple is, I'm praying towards it, which is what Daniel was doing. Remember, Daniel was praying in his windows 3 times a day, and he prayed towards Jerusalem. Why? He wasn't just praying towards Jerusalem. He was praying towards the temple, which is what Solomon said, which is what the dedication was. He was praying towards that place. It's why Muslims, again, are like cheap knockoff Bali imitations of the real. When they pray towards Mecca, it comes from the Old Testament, where they're praying towards the holy mountain, towards the temple. And here he is saying, towards thy holy temple, I will look again towards thy holy temple. God, I will look towards you. I want your presence, because I am at the pits here. I'm at hell. I feel like death has got its grasp around me, and I'm about to die here. And I'm going to look towards thy holy temple. Look at verse number 7. When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came in unto thee into thine holy temple. And the prayer of him goes back to the holy temple, which is where the presence of God is. What he was very trying to run away from. Man, you don't want to run away from the presence of God, because the further you go away from God, the darker and colder and worse it gets. And he's saying, right, and it got very dark and cold for him, to the depths, and he's going, I don't want to be here. God, I need your presence. I need back to your holy temple. And he cries again, and he hears the prayer. I can't help but think of Acts 17, where Paul goes to Athens. When Paul goes to Athens, he sees the city wholly given to idolatry. He sees them just idols everywhere. He gets up to preach to them. And one of the things that he says to them is that about God, though he be not far from every one of us. That's what he was saying to them. He says, you're in your idolatry, you're not even acknowledging, all you've got is an idol that says to the unknown God, just in case we missed one, just in case there's another one out there, to the unknown God. He says, I'll tell you who the unknown God is, and as much as you don't know him, you're actually not far away from him. And a simple calling out to him, he hears. I can't remember exactly the reference. I was trying to find it at my seat. I found it, and then I forgot what the reference was. But it's like Psalm 147, but he says that he is nigh unto all them that call upon his name. That God is near. He's near to everyone. As much as he tried to flee from the presence of God, even in the depths of hell, he could cry out to God, and he's near. God is near to every single one. Doesn't matter how far away a person runs from God, and they can run away from church, and they can go to the clubs, and they can go wherever they are. They can go to the pig pen, but they are one cry away from the Father. That close. God is ever near. Call upon him while he is near. And he says he will call, that he is nigh unto everyone, near unto all of us. And verse 8 I have highlighted. It's one of the greatest verses in the Bible. Didn't quite get it for a little while, but because I'm slow. You going to ask?
No, that's one I was.
Oh yeah, verse 8, exactly.
Because it's highlighted in mine too.
It's fantastic. It says, they that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. You get that? They that observe lying vanities. You know what a lying vanity is? It's an idol. It's a false god. And they that observe false gods, in these moments of great desperation and need, they pray towards their wood, gold, silver, image graven by man's hands. And what does the image of graven in man's hands do to that person, that devotee, that worshipper in his great hour of need? What does the vain, the lying vanity do to him in his great need? Nothing. That's what he says. They that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. And they've forsaken their own mercy by turning to the lying vanities of idolatry. But Jonah is saying, man, I called unto the living God that made all things and even made the whale that I am now inside of. Which it says, God prepared, the Lord prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. I tried to find it or remember it, but when I was in Bible college, we used to have chapel every Tuesday and Thursday, and different pastors from around the country would come and preach. Some were absolute duds, and some were brilliant, and you got this variety of different preaching that came in, and sometimes they were just little country pastors, and sometimes they came from big churches, and they came and preached and overall did a fantastic job. And you remember some of the preaching that took place in those chapel times were absolutely fantastic. One of the ones I half remember and wish I remembered more of it was Pastor Davison preached at the very last, right before it was the last one, the last chapel of the semester, right before we got off, before we got out for Christmas, and I was about to fly home later that day, and he preached, and we got out at lunchtime, but he said, I'm borrowing this sermon. I heard this preached somewhere else. And he says, I borrowed the outline, and it was a alliterated outline, and I can't remember. I don't know if I wrote it in one of my Bibles that I was using, but I can't find it. But he said he preached on the whale and about servanthood and submission from the whale. A lesson on submission and obedience from the whale, and about how God prepared the whale, and God told the whale, all right, got a job for you. I need you to go swallow this guy. And he swallowed, and the whale in his way was obedient to God, that God had prepared, but at the same time, it caused great agitation to him. For 3 days, this whale also was as unhappy as Jonah was. You know, his stomach was churning, he was not right in the guts, and he was hurting as well, all being obedient to his maker. And he preached a wonderful message about the whale, and about it, even at the very end, that God had him vomit Jonah back out on the dry land, and how wonderful is it to go through a period of vomiting. You know, it's no one enjoys those sort of times either. And I wish I could remember the about 3 or 4 different points from that sermon, but it still sticks with me to look at it from the whale perspective and the obedience of submission, a lesson of submission and obedience to God via what the whale did, but vomited out Jonah onto dry land. But it's a wonderful time here in prayer that simply, that it doesn't matter how far away you go, God listens to the repentant heart, and he is merciful. And it's key to the story because God showed mercy to Jonah, and he's about to not like God showing mercy to the Ninevites. So it all plays in here. He's the recipient of mercy. Remember that as you read this story. Any last thoughts? I thought I saw her hand somewhere. I was saying that. Catherine.
I had a question. I thought about it. Just remembered that. It reminded me. In verse 10 it said, and he vomited out Jonah on the dry land. We know when whales get to dry land, they're usually beached. Does that mean the whale served one purpose and so money back?
Maybe.
He threw him up on dry land?
Do you know what? I think that may be actually one of the points that he made. That the whale may have, in all of this, died himself, got beached, trying to get Jonah out of his stomach, and maybe lost his life in being obedient. I think, actually, now that you say that, I think that might have been one of the points. Yeah.
No, I'm sure there was a heap of greenies there.
A guy with an excavator always comes and saves the day. Yeah, is that how all the Bible stories end for you, is it? Yeah, dynamite. Have you seen that? Yeah, don't get rid of it. Okay, yeah, took that. Yeah, it's always, yeah. Buckets of, yeah. Yeah, and amongst all the buckets, here's Jonah with his seaweed. In all seriousness, though, Cal just sort of threw it out there before that there is an opinion that Jonah never came out of this physically the same.
No, people have come out of whales' bellies.
Yeah.
And they are changed.
They are. There was a guy that had an hour in a whale's
15
mouth,
Yeah.
or 15 minutes, was it?
John,
The guy just recently, like in the last 10 years.
1870 something.
Oh, there was.
John Butley or something.
Yeah, there was a guy that got
15 hours, and to me that was
15 hours.
15 hours there.
Wow.
Showed the realness of the Bible.
Yeah.
It proved.
There's a guy on 60 Minutes, like just recently in the last 10 years, from like Massachusetts way or upstate, and he was diving. Took him, and he realised that he got taken. But yeah, there was that guy in the 1800s.
Yeah, he was a whale hunter.
Oh
And
yeah.
I read about it.
There was the other guy that got his leg taken. Got a wooden leg.
Yeah,
Oh, that was.
Your
That was.
I think you're right.
that was Ahab.
Yeah, but he would come out, and it's like that's what. Sorry, get this back on after those comments. But yeah, like the bleaching as well of the skin.
The digestive acid would erode your skin, and you might be losing hair like mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the high growth, I don't want to go further. I think even metal thing like wedding bands.
Yep.
In the acids, stomach acids erode those.
Yeah.
And it's, hydrochloric acid. Very strong.
Yep. Yeah, no, it is very interesting. And the other bit that's interesting to it, not only like did he probably come out differently as a result, potentially with bleaching on the skin or hair or things like that. But we mentioned before that the Ninevites, one of their deities was part fish. And God sends him through the whale before he goes to Nineveh to go preach to them. That got their attention. Yeah, so that's an interesting aspect to the whole story as well. And any last thoughts? We'll close it there and take some time of prayer. Ben, was that a... All right, you were going down the excavator line, were you? All right. Now, it's interesting, honestly. Know this, though, that in the depths of hell, death grasps around you, God is nigh unto all them that call upon him in truth. That's what it says in Psalms.
It's a great type of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Sorry?
Out of that chapter, it's a great type of the Lord Jesus Christ.
I couldn't help but think what just Jude was saying there, where that, you know, if you're in that for a length of time, like even does wedding bands, the stomach acids of I don't know what the stomach acid of a whale does, but I'm sure it's similar. But Jesus also says that he did not see corruption. He was in for a long time, but not long enough to be corrupted. And I think maybe Jonah was the same thing, where he was in for a long time, but not enough to see that, like you said, that level of corruption maybe.
The character have changed, not the body.
Yeah, so I don't know. But it's definitely, Jesus is all the way through that. As he is all the way through the Old Testament, Jesus uses that story specifically to say, right, this pictures me. 3 days and 3 nights, so will I also be 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah didn't go to death. He felt like he went to hell, which is the grave, and death is what it's referring to there, not the place of fires. And Jesus says that he also, like him, but Jesus did go to death and was resurrected. The only reason, some people will say, well, maybe Jonah died and he was resurrected. But I would just say this, dead men don't pray.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, but Jonah was praying there, so I think that might be a key giveaway. All right, find a prayer partner or two, bring their requests before the Lord, and pray for the band aspects.